Okay. So last class we had a little. We finished chapter 1 and had a bit of an introduction to chapter 2. And so last class we saw one issue in chapter 2, which is about samatva, titiksha, samatvam yoga uchyate. We said samadukke sukhe kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. So this idea of samatva bhava, samatvam saha amritatvaya kalpate, that's another idea which we saw. In fact, this is one thought you will see throughout Bhagavad Gita. Although I chose to talk about it in chapter 2, primarily because it appeared for the first time in fair amount of measure. But throughout Bhagavad Gita, very strongly this message that if we don't find a little bit of balance in ourselves, because life outside will throw all kinds of things. I think pluses and minuses are a function of how do we understand rather than what it is. So that is why this idea is hugely emphasized throughout Bhagavad Gita. So we will see anyway that as we go along. Today what we will do in Dvitiya Adhyaya, as I told you, it has three major blocks. The Tat Padartha, about that ultimate principle, that is the Tat Padartha. First part of chapter 2 is there. Then the Tvam Padartha, which relates to the work. How do you position yourself in the world of Vyavahara? So that is really you. And the state of perfection, which is best understood by a question which Arjuna asked, Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha. Who is this Sthita Prajna? Sthita Dihi. What does it mean to have a fixed, being fixed in things? Through that, the last 18-19 shlokas. So we will spend a little bit of time in these three today, because we haven't gotten into it yet. So the first thing is about the Tat Padartha. In fact, there is such a beautiful description between shlokas 16 and 30 in chapter 2. It has such a nice description of the notion of what is called change and changelessness. I mean, it's a simple matter of science for us to know that change is perceived only when there is changelessness. Otherwise, how do you perceive change? The very fact that we perceive change straight away gives an understanding that there is a changeless substratum. Otherwise, how do we see change? So when we talk of change, we need to understand the other side of the coin is changelessness. We are so much preoccupied only with change. We don't see the changelessness. That is the context on which you are seeing change. That idea comes very well. If you look at shlokas 16 to 30 in Bhagavad Gita, very deep concepts. It starts with this nice shloka, Nasato vidyate bhavaha, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubhayorapi drishtontaha tu anayoho tattvadarshibhi. It's a very nice shloka. It's a very nice concept. Na asato vidyate bhavaha. See, there's something called sat and asat, right? Asat is no substance. So Krishna says, if there is some existence, which is bhava, if there is some bhava, it cannot be in asat. The bhava can only be in sat. Because by its very definition, asat is, nothing. How can you find bhava in asat? So he starts with this shloka. He says, Na asato vidyate bhavaha. If something is asat, it can have no bhava. no disposition, no attitude, nothing worth the salt. If I have to use a word like that. So he says, na asato vidyate bhavaha, na abhavo vidyate satah. To absolutely make sure, if you find abhava, it will never be in sat, it will be only in asat. So he says the other part of the story here. He says, na asato vidyate bhavaha. In asat you will never find bhava, and moment you find abhava, it will never be in sat, it will be only in asat. Now you may think, what is being conveyed here? In fact, our fundamental understanding of several things in life, that's why he says, one who understood it, they are tattvadarshi. He puts a very heavy statement. Anayoho, right? Anayoho drishtanta ubayoho, anayoho ubayoho api. Knowing these two parts, he is making two statements. Asat will not have bhava, abhava will never be part of sat. So that's what he is saying. He is saying somebody who understands this very well, he says tattvadarshibhihi. They are those who have seen through the tattva. That tat padartha actually. So what is it? The idea is, this is a very, very important statement. We must be able to say, in many things that we do in life, we do not know what is nitya and anitya. The equivalent of this nitya and anitya. That which is impermanent will be asat. That which is permanent can only be sat. That which is impermanent cannot have an identity because it keeps changing. It disappears. It keeps changing. What identity and what value you have to put on something which is not going to exist after some time. In other words, our ability of understanding a lot of things that we face in life depends on understanding this. In fact, our problem is a lot of things which are asat, we think they are sat. We attach too much importance to it. We take it too serious. We get upset if something happens to it. All of them. So this definition of what is asat. So the equivalent words are asat, anitya, anatma. There are different words like that. These are all similar. That which is not atman is something which will go, which will not remain. That which is not sat will not remain. Because sat is related to satya. Satya is that which doesn't change with time. That's the meaning. So sun will shine is actually a satya. Right? We say truth in a common parlance. Satya means that which can never change with time. Technology cannot come and change. Or the day of the week or the place where we are cannot change it. There are certain things which are non-changing. They are satya and they are sat. They are related. Sat and satya are related. A mirage is a mithya. Because it doesn't exist. It appears. When you go near it, you don't find it. In a desert mirage, you see, in a tar road, sometimes in summer, we see a reflection of the vehicle. That is mithya, that's not satya. Because it is impermanent. So what the shloka is saying is, our ability to handle a lot of things in life is a function of correctly mapping what is permanent and what is temporary. The nearest word is permanent and temporary. A deeper word is changelessness and change. Because that which is permanent will never change. That which is temporary will change. So, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, masarya are all asat. They are not sat. We should not take it too serious. They all will vanish. Right? The preeti that we have on people, on items, on objects are all asat. It cannot be sat because it cannot be the same. It has a tendency to fade. It has a tendency to increase in intensity and also come down in intensity. So a whole lot of the reality that we see around us with respect to dealing with people, dealing with inanimate objects, dealing with occasions, dealing with certain realities that emerge from us, all of them must be mapped with this. We must understand that the governing principle is there will be no bhava in asat and there will be no asat in bhava. No abhava in sat. I am little confusing. Anyway, so this is a very fundamental understanding that we need to develop. Now we need to, these are many of the shlokas that you see in Bhagavad Gita are like axioms. This is an axiom. You have to apply it. This is like an axiom in maths or science. It's a fundamental truth, a fundamental law. We have to reflect on it, understand it, put it into certain kind of application. These are that kind of shlokas. Yes.
Bhava means feeling.
No, bhava means disposition. There are different meanings, different words, different meanings. In this context, bhava means existence, disposition, a certain identity with which it can manifest. All that meaning are there. See, if you take a word go in English, it has 38 meaning. The going is not well. In one go I'll finish it. I am going to Chennai. The word go has 38 meanings. If you look at Oxford dictionary, you'll find 38 meanings. So the same way, your meaning is right. But in this context, we have to understand, see, Atma has different meaning. It means the highest soul to the body, to the mind. We have to interpret it through the context. So here, basically what it means is, that which does not exist cannot have a property. Property is only for existence. So in science, what we, at another level we are looking at it. This is at a much higher level. It says that which cannot exist forever, the properties are also vanishing. That's the idea. I mean, its existence, its disposition, its property, that meaning. Attitude, everything you can put it there. It's a larger.
Everything is there, you will fit in there.
Yeah, everything will fit into it actually. So he starts with this shloka and goes on. There are 16 shlokas. I'll take a few of them. This shloka I already talked about in the first class. Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya navani grannati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani sanyati navani dehi. So he introduces two concepts here, Deha and Dehi. So this Deha belongs to Asat actually. I mean, it doesn't require too much of intelligence to understand it. Science says in 7 years, every single cell in a human body is changed. The 6 billion cells are completely replaced with new. So at a subatomic level also we are not the same person 7 years later. You take your 1-year-old photograph and see it and see your photo now. See your photograph 5 years back. See your grandfather's photograph at the age of 90. Everything changes. The Deha belongs to Asat. The Deha does not belong to Sat. It morphs, it changes all the time. Whereas the Dehi will not. The Dehi is the occupant of this house. You know, this house, this is like a house in which there is a tenant. That tenant is Dehi, that is Sat. The Deha is not Sat. Again, today there is so much of emphasis of maintaining a Deha which is going to deceive you one day and go. Science is not able to solve that problem yet. Science cannot predict earthquake, leave alone predicting my death. Science cannot predict earthquake. I mean, they are working on very complex differential equation. What I am trying to say is, from that level we have to use this axiom. What does it mean? That doesn't mean you show udasina to your own body. It never means that. You put a correct value judgment and the amount of effort you have to put, what you should do with this mortal, frame called body, to what extent you should do, that clarity will come. So the Dehi, here he says, the Dehi, just like we remove a jirnani vasamsi, shirt, a old shirt as we throw. In the same way, the tenant who occupies this house, which is the Dehi, the house is the Deha, he says that will also say after some time, I don't need it. I leave it and go. So that is what this shloka is saying. Just as we throw an old shirt and take a new shirt, this Dehi which is Sat, says this Deha is Asat. At one point it says this is of no use. I mean, it doesn't mean it is materially unfit. There are people who die at the age of 8 in an accident. There are people who die at the age of 15. There are people who die at the age of 30. So don't imagine that unfit means wear and tear. Unfit means conceptually unfit. This Dehi says this body is of no use for me anymore. So let me drop it and go. Because the body is dropped, the body belongs to Asat. There is no permanence. There is something which is the intrinsic material which is permanent, is what people actually understand. So that's what is coming through this shloka which we saw in the first class itself. Then there are a set of shlokas Right? Without losing the continuity, I have picked up the shlokas rather than going through all the 15 shlokas. We will not lose the continuity. Look at this shloka. Both are saying very similar things. Nainam chintandi shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, nacha enam kledayanti apaha, na soshayati marutaha. The word enam, I already mentioned, I think. If you refer something, if you want to refer it again the second time, in Sanskrit you use the word enam. First time you have said something, you don't have to say it again and again. You want to point it again, the word used is enam. So this enam refers to Dehi. Because we are coming from the 22nd shloka to 23rd shloka. So it's all talking about the Sat, not the Asat. So it says this Dehi, this tenant who is sitting inside this frame, what happens to it? It says, Na enam chintanti shastrani. Weapons cannot cut it. You cannot use weapons and cut it. Right? Na enam dahati pavakaha. Fire cannot burn it. Fire can burn the asat. Fire cannot burn sat. That's the idea. That which is permanent, by its very definition, it is permanent. If it gets lost, then it loses its definition of permanence. So because it is permanent, none of these material things which can indeed affect it. That is the point he is coming here. Na enam dahati pavakaha. Nacha enam kledayanti apaha. Water cannot wet it. Right? Na soshayati martha. Air cannot dry it. Now the point, if you argue from science, the inference you have to get out of this is that Sat that we are talking about does not belong to the domain of material things. It is beyond material, because material things will go through all that. Anything which is not material, only you can say this. It's a difference between a software and a hardware. You can remove enam and put software. Nainam chintanti shastrani, nainam software, chintanti shastrani, I can say that. Because software is not material. It's an effect. You can say this for electricity. Electricity cannot be dried, electricity cannot be cut, electricity cannot be wet with water. If you put water, you can get a shock. But nothing will happen to electricity. It's a subtle energy. So scientifically what it means is, he is telling us that Sat, intrinsic property of Sat is, it is beyond the domain of material plane. That is what we are getting here. Only that which is beyond the material plane can fit into this description. Anything which is material, somewhere you can cut it or heat it or dry it, something you can do. So that is what is coming here. So he says this Sat does not belong to the domain of material. Which means some of the law of lot of particle physics, everything will go. No, it will not apply to the Dehi. It may apply for the Deha, but not for the Dehi. Same idea he says here in the first line. He says, Achedyaha ayam cannot be cut. It is beyond possibility of cutting. Achedyaha ayam. Adahyaha cannot be burnt. Dahana is not possible. Adahi, same thing he is saying here. Akledyaha, it cannot be wet, and asosyaha, it's being repeated. I don't know why there is a reason to it. It's exactly repeated. Okay? So it says that Sat that I am talking about. See, the idea is, if you want to make something absolutely clear, better tell more than once. No, that's practice, no? We want to be absolutely sure. We don't want people to miss. So at the risk of redundancy, we say it. That's the only way you can explain why the same idea is told. To make it absolutely clear, don't miss this point. Don't miss this point. It doesn't belong to the domain of material things. So the same two lines is compressed into one line now. Same idea. All the four things are here. Right? It cannot be cut. It cannot be burnt. It cannot be wetted. And it cannot be dried up. Right? Then he says Nityaha. So therefore, because it cannot be subjected to any of that, therefore what is its intrinsic property? Anything which is called Sat will be Nitya. It will be present ever. It will be here tomorrow, day after tomorrow, the billion years before, billion years later also. That's the meaning of Nitya. Nityaha Sarvagataha. Now you have taken the materiality out of it, so it can now spread. You can use science to even argue this. Moment you take materiality, it is unconditioned now. Correct? Energy can just spread. It's a subtle form of energy. This is like, our cyber cache now. Cyber cache is here. Moment I take the modem and then do something, cache will start flowing out from here into Flipkart. Cache is all over here. Please understand. Who said cache is not there? As long as there is one transponder, we have one transponder here. So therefore cache is here. That's the idea. Sarvagataha. Right? Stanuhu. It is stira. Okay? Achalaha. Doesn't move. Sanatanaha. Right? Puratanaha, Sanatanaha, whatever you want to say. It's very old and ancient and ever and so on. The point is, through this, by contrast, we have to understand something. If you read our ancient literature, they have said anything which belongs to the domain of material, quote unquote. So far I am saying these are all beyond the domain of material. If you say, you show me anything which belongs to the domain of material, it can be this, it can be this desk, it can be this body, anything. It can be a furniture. All are in the domain of material. They will go through 6 stages. Nobody can stop it. Science can defer it a little bit. Science cannot stop it. There are 6 stages. This anything which is asat, anything which is temporary, you have now described how did this temporariness happen. It has 6 stages. First thing is jayate. I can argue it for this furniture. This furniture jayate is the day I decided to make this furniture is jayate. This concept has come. I want to make this furniture now. All material things start with the conceptualization stage. Jayate. If it is a child, then the fertilization has happened. That is a jayate. Right? If it is a living being which is coming, it's like that. Then asti. Now it is taking a shape. There is no mortality. It takes a shape. That is asti, the second stage. Then asti means birth. Now that this chair is made, or a child is born, or whatever, right? Then vardhayati, starts growing. Growing in a sense of you can measure a tape and see. I mean, that is for Chit Shakti. For Jada Shakti, it grows as it is being made. Beyond that, you can't talk of growth here. It had 2 legs, I put 2 more legs, and I put a backrest, and that's how the growth is here. Whereas if it is a Chit Shakti, there is a growth which we all go through. That's the 3rd stage. Vardhayati. Then Parinamayati. That's why I said everything changes. Our photo you see after a few years. Cells change. Metabolic activities change. Everything changes in us. Everything changes. This goes through change. It looks beautiful, then it gets dirty, it gets one stick start breaking, it started shaking, everything happened. That is called Parinamayati. It goes through transformation. Then Kshayati. Now it's called deterioration. Because all material things must go through deterioration. This is a universal law of science. You can defer it at most for a few years, a few hours. All that we can do. But nobody can escape this. Kshayati and perishes, mriyate. One day it has to go. So the Deha will also go through all this. Right? In fact, this Bhartrihari, he wrote 300 pieces. Bhartrihari was the elder brother of Vikramaditya. Something very bad happened in his personal life. So he was fed up. He said, enough of all this. Right? He said, he deserted a kingdom, he gave it, and then he wrote 300 pieces. Niti Shataka, Shringara Shataka, and Vairagya Shataka. Very good. In fact, Niti Shataka and Vairagya Shataka are very good actually. So there is one shloka there, I remember that. He says, Adityaihi gatar agaraha samkshiyate jivitam. What he says is, every day a sun rises. In fact, after I read it, this thought has very strongly, got into my mind. The moment you are born, you are not growing, you are actually shrinking. If you ask me why, because let's say I am supposed to live 95 years. Let me be a little generous. Let's say I am supposed to live for 95 years. Multiplied by 365.25. From the day I was born, this number will come down by 1. So nobody grows according to me, everybody shrinks only. So after, that's what he says. Adityaihi gatar aharaha. Every day as sun rises, Samkshiyate Jivitam. The Jivitam is coming down. It is not going up. We all think we are growing. Nobody is growing. Honestly, I will tell you, we have come in to shrink. Physically, we may become a little taller and all that, but the fact is, that's what he said. So, Adityaihi Gataraha Samkshiyate Jivitam Vyaparaihi Bahukarya Gurubihi Kalopi Najñayate. We are very busy. Vyaparaihi Bahukala Gurubihi. Heavy work. We all say that. He said, we are all very busy. So, we are so busy, we never knew time passed by. Kalopi Najñayate. Then he says, Jara, Vyadi, Marana, Trayasta no pasyate. Na upapadyate. He says, his people dying, all kinds of happening around us, it never shakes us. Shakes us temporarily, that's all. It never shakes us. You know why? Because the day he knows I am permanent. That's why I think we are not worried. We are worried temporarily, then we get back to our natural state. Our natural state is we know that this Deha may go, but I don't go. That's why I think we are not worried. He says, so many things happen around, people are simply not worried. Trasasta nopadyate. He says, Pitva mohamayim pramada madiram unmatta bhutam jagat. I think the whole world is gone mad. There's so much happening around and they have no idea what's going on. They have drunk some nectar which has made them unmatta. Something like that he says. So the point I am making, there is one Ayusha Shukta, Ayur Richa. Ayur Richa starts by saying every day, that's Usha Sukta, that also says, every day as daylight comes, it's as though one wing is being cut in our, if you take life as a bird, then one feather is cut. That's the reality. So that's what this is saying. Because this Deha is asat, it belongs to the domain of material things. So all material things have to go through 6 stages of transformation. In fact, all our life, I mean, I'm not saying pessimistically, I'm also saying the reality. Our life can be characterized very simple. Janma, Jara, Vyadi, Marana. These are the 4 milestones, positions. Within that you have to adjust it a little bit, play Janma and Marana. These are 2 endpoints given. In between you have Jara and Vyadi, old age and disease. This is another way. Why I am saying this is not run away from that. It is develop comfort. That's the way it is. Why are you worried? Make use of it. Put it to reasonable use so that it doesn't bother you much. But don't lose your sleep on that because that goes through these 6 stages. This 6 is Janma, Marana, Jara, Vyadi. That's where all these are bundled. So this idea he says another axiom. This is a nice axiom. He says, Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityuhu dhruvam janma mritasya cha. That which disappeared will come back. No way it can go. That in fact the best way to understand is to ask, did you get the coffee beans from the plant or you get the plant from the beans? When did the first banyan tree started and what is the ancestral lineage to the current banyan? It's very difficult. It's a very intricate cycle. That's what he says. So to explain this is coming here. Let's see this. He says, because this is at a conceptual level, you have to understand. He says, Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityuhu. Dhruvo means for sure. Those who are born, that which is born. A body is born, a soul is not born. An idea is born. A furniture is born. An institution is born. A company is born. Everything belongs to this category. He says, Jatasya, that which is born, he dhruvo mrityuhu. For sure it will find the end one day. As I told you, you can only adjust it. This way or that way. So, Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityuhu. Then he says, dhruvam janma mritasya cha. That which disappeared will not disappear, it will reappear. You don't know the pattern to see. Erdogan would have been dead. Erdogan is never dead. Never come to a conclusion Erdogan is dead. Because Erdogan reappears in several ways, giving us the benefit of 6,000 rupee ticket to Delhi instead of 15,000 rupees 15 years back. That's the idea. Many things are like that. In management parlance, things which disappear will never disappear. They actually reappear. It's only the pattern which changes. we have to see through that pattern, then we make a larger meaning of many things. That's what it is. So, jatasya hi dhruvo mrityuhu, dhruvam janma mritasya cha, that which went off will come again. For sure, he says, dhruvam. Right? Tasmat aparihartarte natvam shochitumari. See, you are so worried you are going to kill this person, that person. Don't worry. This is one pattern you are seeing. If you go to a much higher level, you see a different pattern. You are not able to make sense of it. So don't worry too much. See, in between he gives this gyan a little bit, because otherwise he is not going to get up and say fight, because he has really a problem in front of him. So the point is, when you have a very serious problem, the message that we have to take also from here, when we have a very serious problem, we have to see a much bigger picture, otherwise we will never solve the problem. One way to solve a deep problem is to see a much bigger picture, in which you should be able to see many things. Otherwise this conflict will kill us. At a lower level it will be full of conflicts. That is what he is going through. The only way you can make him wake up and say, what can I do, is to show him a much bigger picture. I mean, this is a real benefit for us also. When we have a very deep problem, you have to first step back and look at a much bigger picture, in which you also see this as one of the problems. You will see a better pattern there. That is what he is getting through. That's the first thing he is getting into, talking to him. So, na tvam shochitum arhasi. Then he says, how do you understand this? He says, there is something called manifestation. So the trick is, there is something called manifestation and unmanifestation. That's all. Reality is only this. If you are able to see that kind of reality, you will make meaning to many things in life. So he says, Avyaktadini bhutani, Vyakta madhyani bharata, Avyaktani nidananyeva, Tatrako paridevana. So he says, this birth, death, people coming and going, idea being coming in and then going away, all these are disturbing you so much. I will tell you another axiom. If you can step away and see it, the world is nothing but a world of manifestation and unmanifestation. Manifestation, unmanifestation. So the jackfruit seed is an unmanifested form of the tree, which is going to grow some 100 feet and this wide. So when you see a jackfruit seed, you must see the jackfruit tree there. It is in an unmanifested form. When it sprouts, the banyan tree, which is the 700-year-old banyan tree in Botanical Gardens, Calcutta, was nothing. It was contained in a seed, right? So it is from unmanifested form, it becomes manifested. And then once the useful life is over, it goes back to a stage of unmanifested form. In fact, my friend taught me this lesson, because he said, who said my parents are not here? He said, my parents are here. I am not able to see them in a frame. Just because they are, in our common parlance, they are dead, it doesn't mean they are. I mean, he had such a conviction to say. Actually, what he is saying is, my parents, both his parents died, one father very early and mother sometime earlier. That time we used to have a little conversation. He told me, Mahadevan, maybe they were in the Vyakta form. I was able to give a shape and a name to them. But because that part disappeared, if I think they have disappeared, he says, my level of understanding is low. But last year I went, one of my cousin's husband died at the age of 50. He has a 11-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy. What can you say? Right? He had cancer. At one level they were happy at least died, because he was really suffering for 7 years, he died. But at that moment, actually, I went and I didn't use this shloka. I called the boy and I called the girl, both of them I called, they are a little friendly with me. I told, don't look at your father, don't think your father is always like this and only in photo and all that. Whenever all that your father believed in, you see in this world, you have to see father there. This is how I was trying to explain, because how do you otherwise make sense of it? So father, from a material idea, I told them, should become a concept for you. Who said you can't? If my father liked so much something or like doing something, some people do, we do it. In normal terms also we do it. I am able to see somebody in some other form. That is what he is saying. He is saying, if you can go to that level of understanding, lot of change management. This is all about change management. These 16 shlokas, if you want to use it in your personal life, in addition to Vedanta and so on, great ideas on change management. You should really be able to handle change. And change can be understood only with these ideas. So he says, and in death they become avyakta. So death is nothing but it is changing its thing from a manifestation to an unmanifested form. It doesn't disappear. Because if cash disappears and if you say that's the end of cash, I am foolish. I know that cash is floating all around. That's what I am giving that example. It has become cyber cash. It has become unmanifested now. It can manifest later. I can do something and then it can get me a good or something. At that time it manifests. It's all bits of data floating all around the world. So that is what it is. So he says that's why don't worry. Try to understand you are confronting a serious problem which I know. But try to understand it with a different perspective, then you will see much more meaning to what you do. But more than that, I think these are very important for us to reflect. Because a lot of change that we go through in life, a lot of situations we handle both in personal life, professional life, social life, all these will come again and again. So some of these ideas, if we can keep thinking, it will guide us a little bit in our response, in our way to handle, in our way to understand meaning to things happening. These are all very useful. So 2 more shlokas with that. This whole thought of these 16 shlokas are very good. In fact, I was 5 years back, 6 years back when 1 dozen PGP students we used to sit and discuss. I told them all these descriptions apply for a company. I said a company, this is like a soul. These descriptions are about Dehi. I said, ABB Limited has a Dehi. The Deha is ABB Limited. It will go through, everything will happen. I said, can you find out what is the soul of an organization? I said, a top management must do. I said, let's do an exercise. If you had to consult for a company, I gave them this idea. Go and you meet the top management, call them, give them a sheet of paper, give them half an hour or 20 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour. Can you write 4 bullets of how do you describe your company? Let them write. That's the message I get from these slokas. Keep that paper aside. Give them another sheet and say, I'll give you another half an hour. Tell me how will you describe your company 25 years from now. I'll give you half an hour. Write only 3 bullets. Let them write, take it. Give another sheet of paper. Can you please write 3 bullets, what is your company 100 years from now? I told if you can match these 3 notes, you will find the soul. Because it will not talk about people, it will not talk about technology. All of them would have changed, they are all asat. But something will remain. And that is so corporate visioning exercise can be done with these 16 shlokas if you ask me. So it is talking about a soul for a company which is called vision. The soul for a company is its vision through which it has to go through. Because in 100 years everything must change. People will change, technology will change, market will change, everything will change. But if you still think that something is remaining, that is the Dehi. So everywhere it applies. It doesn't just apply for our personal life, it applies everywhere. So change is the essence of life. So let us not run away from change. Let us not become uncomfortable about change. Because that's our problem. For average people, change creates so much discomfort in us. We want status quo at any cost. Whereas this is all about, because everything changes, context changes, people around us change, perspectives of life changes. I met one IAS officer. He said, in fact, he was candid enough to say, my ego has dramatically changed. He said, I was a great IAS officer, now I am a president of the temple committee. The ego here is 1/10 of the ego I had 15 years. It's true. When I was earning, I was at the height of my ego was X. Now I am 70 years old, I am the temple committee president, my ego is X divided by 10 or something. See, everything changes in life. That's what he is saying. They are all asat actually. There is something which is seeing all of them. That's why you recognize the change. Now you should ask, how did you know the change? There is an unchanging substratum from which you are seeing the change. Otherwise you will never, if you go in a train and there is another train running at the same speed, no change. Both of them look as though they are not moving. It's a very simple idea. So it itself points to an unchanging reference point in us, which is what he calls it as Dehi, the soul. So we find all these, right? So the first thing we have to understand is change must be valued in the context of changelessness. So the moment you see a change, look for changelessness. Your discomfort of change will come down. That's the message we are getting. The moment you have a change, don't look at the change. Look at what is the changelessness which is making me see the change. maybe some of these issues will fade very quickly. So there are quite a few management ideas also we can pick up from these shlokas. Right, in every situation we can segregate the changing and the unchanging elements, establish what are these peculiar characteristics of changelessness and changing aspects, because that will help us a lot of clarity in how do we handle things.
When you tell that the soul is unchangeable, so and we also talk about rebirth, eventually you have salvation. So if soul is something which cannot change, how does one transform from one birth to the other? That is always like, as you said earlier, that is from heaven to hell, or depending on what you do, that's what.
Yes.
So how does it change eventually to at the end to
Yeah, so it's a very elaborate model. First of all, if you accept this paradigm, then you have to make it completely foolproof, because then you need a database. You need to keep in stock of all credit and debit and pull it out the second time when you come. It's a very complex database management system which is working. I mean, these are all part of the paradigm. It's called vasanas and karmas and so on. Let me not get into it now. Maybe offline we can talk. But there is a very elaborate set of ideas which goes along with this. And it's saying that it's like hibernate it for some time and take it out. So the avyaktani cha bhutani is hibernation. Vyakta madhyani is sprout. And then in death you again become avyakta, that is hibernation again. So there is a model like that. And there are ways to connect, make sure that all accounts are properly maintained and all debit credits are all posted and so on. I mean, we have to use words like that. But I will not, it will distract us a little bit. So transformation process, everything can be understood only with changelessness as the context from which we should be able to see change in life. Okay. So that's one set of themes, 16 shlokas that you will see in chapter 2. Then the second, that is about the tat padartha, which is sat. That's why om tat sat is what is used. Tat is actually sat. That's the idea there. So anyway, then the second thing is about work. Bhagavad Gita to a large extent is about work. To a large extent. And then it takes us to different, as we go to 16, 17, 18, we will see the transformation. Now, work, the way we do work is something like this. It all starts with I. I is the focal point of work. It doesn't matter what work you do. You help your daughter or son do her homework, his homework, help in the kitchen or do kitchen work in office, do social service in temple, it doesn't matter. Work, you see work only when you see I. That's why I said Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara must exist. Indistinctively. It should be distinctively existing. Only then work is possible. So moment I say work, I exist as a separate entity. And there is something other than me, that is why I am engaging in work. That is the first principle. Moment you operate from that basic understanding, all these is a sum of them. You can put hundreds of tags. I put some here. The I is the kingpin, fulcrum of this whole thing. So I am responsible for this work, I can only do this work, nobody else can do. I have to produce the results. I will be judged by what I do in this. Set of ideas of that kind. Then there are certain work outcome related challenges. Outcomes are uncertain, may be favorable or otherwise. My status depends on the success. These kinds of thoughts can also come in us when we do work. Then there is a fruit, right? I am doing work because it fetches me something. That's why I am doing work. We have that feeling quite often. Work is connected with several other works. So this leads to me that leads me to this and so on. And work completion depends on many others. In chapter 18 he beautifully talks about this. Finally he concludes some of these ideas very well in chapter 18. But the moment we say work, there are a variety of things which come to us. But the net result of all these is work actually bonds us. What I mean by bondage is not that bonded labor. What I mean is work affects us. In many ways it affects us. Positively also, negatively also. Work does not leave us alone. Work really affects us. That is the fact of life. So what Krishna basically attacks this idea. He says, is there a possibility for us, no matter what work we do, Is there a possibility for us in which we can enjoy doing work and doing work will not limit me? Doing work is pure joy, right? Doing work is all making me purer, cleaner in life. Is there a possibility? He is projecting a possibility for which he has certain axioms. He says if you follow these axioms, that will happen. So that is how he starts this whole notion of work. So in Bhagavad Gita, work is not seen as a mechanism to collect salary and promotions. It has taken a much bigger perspective. It says work is a larger issue which can make meaning to life. That is the approach he has taken. While salaries and promotions and incentives are very much there, but the central theme of work is it should evolve me. It should make me complete. It should make me stronger as a person. My character gets stronger. That is the perspective with which he is actually looking at work. It can lead you to complete liberation. You should be free. You can work, but you should be free. You cannot be tainted by anything. Let anything happen. I mean, that is the real state. Let anything happen. It should not affect me. If you can work like that, work can be very enjoyable actually. Right? So much beyond salary, happiness of lower order and so on. And he says yoga hai karma sukausham. He says that is the meaning of efficiency. Also he talks about this idea. He introduces in chapter 2. Throughout the 16 chapters he actually connects it in many ways again and again. But this is a very cardinal theme for Bhagavad Gita. That's why Bhagavad Gita is not about running away from work, because there is one shloka everybody quotes and they wrongly also mention karmaneva adhikaraha ma paleshu kadachana. Oh, no outcome, so you do work, and then there is a very different kind of understanding we will. Okay. There are 47th sloka, which is that famous sloka karmanyeva adhikaraha ma paleshu kadachana ma karma pala heturbohu mate sangastu akarmani. But in preparation to that he lays again some. It's a very logical text. It's not simply some ideas are thrown at you and say take it or leave it. It's a very logical text. So first he prepares us with a few ideas. He says yaya buddhya. I am going to tell you a way of doing it. Knowledge. Here buddhi is not brain. Here buddhi means knowledge. Yaya buddhya partha yuktaha. If you become a yukta with this kind of a understanding, his first thing he says is karma bandham prahasyasi. You will not be tied with work. Tied with work means work will affect me, work will create an impression with me which I don't like, which will taint me, which will limit me, which will constrain me. He says all that will go. I will tell you a set of ideas. If you look at it, understand and appreciate it, one thing I will guarantee you, that you will be unshackled. All these chains put around you in the name of work will all go. That's how he starts. In fact, the 38th sloka is what we saw. He says, labha, labho, jaya, jaya. That's the last sloka in that piece. Samatva and all that. Then he comes into work, 39th sloka. Then he makes another important statement. He says this way of doing work will do two things for you. Na iha abhikrama nashaha. The effort that you put will not get wasted. See, this is very important when you work. This is very important. If you work and then the effort goes wasted, then we will not even start. I mean, we'll be very dampened in our enthusiasm, no? So he says, na iha abhikramaha nashaha asti. Your work will not get, your energy doesn't get wasted. There's another interesting thing he says. He says, pratyavayona vidyate. It will not produce an opposite effect. See, these are the two important things. And my famous quote is, my dancing's algorithm. LP, this operation research, this darling of operation research is an algorithm called dancing. That has, the greatness of that algorithm is it tells two things. For those who know, you may appreciate. It tells two things. It says you will do only finite step. That's told even before you started. In finite step you will find. And in finite step you will be told that there is an optimal or no optimal. If there is optimal, there is one everything will be told in a fine. That's the charm of that algorithm. Exactly similar. He says two conditions. Your work will not get wasted. It will not produce opposite. You can't go 1 kilometer and say is all wrong, I have to come back again. That is not only abhikrama nasha, it is also pratyavaya, opposite effect. So the LP algorithm is exactly like that. You can only progress, you will never deteriorate. And in a finite step, everything is done. That's the greatness of that algorithm, something like that. So he established that. I mean, it's a basic way. Nowadays, software is there. It's called simplex table. Simplex table. It's simplex table. That's a much better word to use. Simplex table is exactly belongs to this category. In finite, if you do handwork, you will appreciate it. Nowadays, everybody uses the software and so on. Anyway, so that's how it is. Then he introduces the concept of work, which is karmanyeva adhikara. That is 47. There are a few shlokas which says how people engage in.
What is yoga buddhi?
So yoga buddhi is karma yoga. Basically, the word yoga is used to indicate karma yoga, and karma yoga means how do you do work, karma, with a certain disposition of mind, which is what he is saying in that shloka. Karmanyeva adhikaraha mapaleshu kadachan. So all that he called as yoga buddhi. So here yoga is not, again, yoga has different meanings. Here the karma yoga here refers to karma yoga. So the buddhi, the knowledge of doing work with that principle is what he is referring here.
Why yoga?
See, word yoga is a beautiful, that's why every chapter is called yoga in Bhagavad Gita. Yoga means, it comes from a Sanskrit root called you. Just you. From the root you, there are lots of words. Yukta, yoga. Yukta is also there. Just now here also there is a yukta here. See, you, the word dhatu, you, Sanskrit, means that which is very aligned, which is in sync.
This will be aligned with what?
You are a very aligned person. Otherwise, you will see, very soon I will show you how you become an ayukta if you don't do the way you do things. So aligned means you are in sync with reality, you are in sync with what is to be done. What happens is we do work and we destroy our peace of mind. We destroy peace of mind of others, we ruin our peace of mind and everybody's peace of mind. That is ayukta. So yukta or yoga is a word in which it is very aligned with what? Aligned with a lot of things. In other words, aligned with the larger principle, aligned with the right thing to do. So aligned is a very generic meaning of yoga. That's why the engineering word yoke, I was mentioning it. Yoke connected properly. You should be connected with the ultimate principle well. He is called a yukta. Let's say this is called yoke. This coupling is called yoke in engineering. That has come from the Sanskrit yug and yuk. That is a yoke. So it is aligned. Sorry. Okay. So he puts a set of ideas in chapter 2, which he anyway expands in great detail as we go along. Essentially, there are many things he is saying through these things. If you have to run a little deep to understand it, he says, first of all, work is your right. You have right in the sense you have control only on what you do. Whatever you do, you have no control on everything else. Although we spend a lot of time in our life to try to control things which are outside. Fact, with all that, it may work sometimes, it may work 80%, 90% and so on. The fact is, what is in your control is what you can do. So that's the meaning here actually. So adhikaraha, I use the word right. The correct word is not right. Adhikara means things are under control only when it comes to you do work. For all other things, you can tweak, you can do all that, but we do not know. There are umpteen reasons why it may work the other way also. Strictly it is not in our control actually, the others. So he says that karmanyeva adhikaraha ma paleshu mato sangastu akarmani, all that is there. Then he said yogaha karmasu kaushalam. Kaushalam is efficiency. He says efficiency in work comes only through yoga. He says don't worry about fruits, no energy dissipated regarding root cause of fruits and so on. We'll see all of them. Focus on the changeless aspects, quintessential aspects, and then understand everything is in the long run. So don't worry about some certain things happening in the short run, and long run can be really very long. If you bring all these ideas, there may be a sensible way of doing things.
Basic question which always comes: what is the work which I have to do? What's the work assigned for it?
Whatever you're doing.
Can we? No, we will take it up in some of the later. Somewhere it may. All these descriptions are a little bit there. Chapter 3 or somewhere we will take it. There are some descriptions like that. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the central shloka for Bhagavad Gita. Karmanyeva adhikaraha te. To you, for you, as far as you are concerned, your adhikara is only in doing work. Adhikara means this is the only thing which is in your control. I've used the word right, but it's not really right. It is a locus of control. That's a better word. Locus of control you have only with respect to work. Right? Ma paleshu kadachana. You have no locus of control on the outcome. I mean, this idea has to be understood very, very correctly. Because life teaches us throughout 24/7, we sometimes don't see it. Ma paleshu kadachana. You have no locus of control. Right? Then he says, Ma karma pala heturbuhu. Not even have a locus of control on who is giving you the fruits. This is the outcome. This is the root of that outcome. Means it is coming from somewhere. He says, even there you don't have a locus of control. Now, if you tell these three, then people will say you are putting very tough conditions, I will not work. So Krishna wanted to avoid that possibility, so he put a fourth part. He said, Ma te sangastu akarmani. You cannot remain without doing work in the society. Because if you put these three conditions, people will say, in chapter 3 he says there is nothing like no work. When you don't do no work, there is a lot of work you are doing. He explains all that in chapter 3 in any case. So there are four components here. Karmaneva adhikaraha. Ma paleshu kadachana. Kadachana is at no point in time. He wants to be very emphatic there. Right? Ma karma pala hetuhu buhu and ma tu sangaha tu akarmani. So you can't remain without doing work in the society. Right? Now the biggest questions are around this shloka. People then immediately ask me, sir, does that mean no more targets? It's a very easy, straight question I get quite often. Does that actually, since anyway you have no control on fruits, then are you telling me you have no targets? Let me tell you, in fact you must fix targets. It's extremely important that we must fix targets. But it is absolutely foolish to think what you fix will actually happen. Fix targets, put your best foot forward, put your best efforts. There is a great chance you will get. There are some times you don't get. Develop that maturity and grace to take what comes out of what happened. That is what it is saying. It doesn't say don't fix targets, no more target, nothing of that kind. It says please fix targets, put the best foot forward, put all your effort, have the grace to take. Sometimes it can. I can tell you with science, with so much of science, if I ask you what time Shatabdi from Chennai will come today evening, you can't tell. That's why science used a huge science sub-science called probability. Because the probability of one event is either 0 or 1. It is meaningless science actually. What is the probability of tossing a coin? It is either 0 or not half. Only if you toss it 100 times you can say half. If you toss it once, it is either 0 or 1. So you need probability. You please take probability in life. That's what Krishna is saying. When he says Ma Paleshu, he says there is only a probability that you will get results. That's the meaning of that statement. So please work, but then probability can be 70%, 80%, 0 also, 1 also. That's what he is actually getting at.
This last thing.
Yeah.
Mahat is Sangosta Karma. You cannot remain even without any action.
Yeah.
Without doing any action. Actually, what propels for action?
No, actually, this question comes because we think action means we have to physically or exert. You sit, suppose you are supposed to do some work. You are in inaction. You have actually created work for a lot of people. So it doesn't that you have to do work. You will always do work, either through you or through some agent. So this, you don't have to take it in a narrow sense of no action means not physically. When you are not physically exerting also, you will actually be doing work.
What is propelling me to do that?
Yeah, so that he says, in fact there is a beautiful sloka in 18th chapter which I said. He says that everybody has a certain nature and yena pravritti bhutanam sarvamidam swakarmana tam abhyarcha siddhim vindati manava. There is a nice talk. He says, what is a sensible thing to do? He says, we have all come here in a very complex, in fact you cannot find out why did we land here. In fact you cannot find out why did you land at 7 o'clock here actually. You don't know why you came, because there are 1,000 things you could have done. All of us could have done 1,000 equally interesting things. We all landed here for some reason. So every moment of life is like that. Every moment of life, the activities happen in a very complex way. So to reduce this complexity, rather than worrying too much about this complexity, best thing is to say that we are all come here. There is a larger force which is operating. I am an instrument in the hands of God. So let me, whatever is ordained, whatever signals coming, let me do what. Such people are a lot more sensible in life. They have too much of headaches actually. They are also doing good work. And so what propels work is very hard to answer. It's a very complex web. You have really no idea why you engaged in some work at 7:30, why you did something at 7:45, why you did not do something today morning which you normally do. You can't explain. So trying to even get that is a very futile exercise actually. Whereas go with your swabhava and then go through the wind and then enjoy doing, collectively we will make a lot of sense to ourselves. That's the point he is actually coming to.
There is a relationship between work and the fruit, right?
Work and the?
Fruit of the work. So, I mean, the quality of the work can be, determined by the fruit of the work. So, how do we say that?
No, that's a simple first level understanding. Let me again explain. No, it's a good question. A very good question. Are you telling me that I became a professor and a dean of this institute just on my hard work?
No, I don't.
No, so the fruit, what the point I'm making is, the fruit that each one of us are enjoying, there is a complex set of people helping it here. Just because you are not able to see them, you don't know which kind of forces. In fact, you becoming a better professor, half a dozen fellows must go first. It is happening. If you become a CEO, 1 dozen people must actually, something must happen, Swami Dayananda Saraswati very nicely writes in his book, the person who actually shot the baseball and got the team winning, actually it is a set of things which actually came in his favor. I mean, he was there, he is not discounting that. He said it is not you alone. That is the point. So therefore, there is a very complex set of things. If you understand that, there is a lot of grace in even accepting results.
What I intend to say is like a person who is very hardworking and a person who is like very lazy. I think there is God who looks at it and gives the fruit according to your work. You can't say that there is a grace, there is always a grace. But you cannot say all the time a person who is lazy would still...
No. So, no. So, actually for chapter 18, he says there are 5 factors which give you... there are 5 factors. He actually explained it. There are 5 factors for something to succeed. 5 factors are adhishtanam. First, you should show your skills. You need a platform first. Whether as a CEO, as a professor, as something, first you need a platform. If people have not given you a platform, there is no way you would have demonstrated. That's why Rajinikanth, who was a bus conductor in route number 18, became Rajinikanth, where he got a platform to show his talent. Adhishtanam, karanam, process, karta, vividha cheshtaha. There are lots of other processes must run. Then finally Krishna says, Daivam cha atra pancham. So there is a grace element also. It's not just these 4 alone deliver. So therefore, there is a surprise element which is called residual value in regression equation. This is what science anyway uses. What is this regression? What is this unexplained variance? Daivam cha atra panchamam. That is called the epsilon. So therefore, so there is a much larger complex thing. So if you understand it very well, then what you are saying is, I put hard work, so you want to thumb the desk and say give me results. That we can't do. Because there is a 5th element which is an unexplained variance. Like that.
What I intend to say is like there is always a relationship between good work, hard work and the...
Generally yes.
Looks like that.
No, generally it is. The work and the output are generally related. So I have to use the word generally. And that's why he says, don't heavily bet only on that, then you will destroy yourself. He is worried about you. He is not worried about the results or the work. He is worried about you. He says, I don't want you to get destroyed. So generally it is true, but be ready for surprises. So the best thing is, take it. In chapter 44, there are 12 principles he talks, in which some of these are, how do you prepare your mind for it? I call it as 12 principles of discovering joy of work. In chapter 4 slokas 19 to 22, there are some set of slokas. At that time we will, actually this idea will run throughout, so we will keep seeing it.
The only thing was like when it was written you have no right to fruits. That's why
I think I should, no control on fruit. I should use, I think this is not proper. You are right. Your locus of control is a better word.
I do not agree to that, mainly because work is in a much larger sense. It's not only the corporate or the skill level of work which we're talking. Like for example, if I look at my grandmother, or the totally selfless type of work which people do. They've been in the family for generations, they do, but what do they expect? Do they expect their children or from the children, anything from the grandchildren? All this is work, right? So there is a difference between work which you do to get some result, and there is a work which you do without expecting anything, totally selfless. I think that's what it's meant to be.
In fact, he is pushing the idea that every work, if we can pursue in that later domain of selflessness, we'll see it as we go along. He actually argues how it can sort out a lot of issues we are going through in life. That's where he is getting. We'll anyway see it, because these are very challenging things. So we'll have to, better we keep bouncing back and forth. I'm alright, actually.
That selflessness, that kind of work which is aligned with selflessness, then also that residual power becomes there.
Yeah. But then once you do selflessness, you're actually not worried. The worry goes, we are worried about the worry, actually speaking. We'll see it as we go along, we'll see it. Anyway, so ma paleshu kadachana is a little uncomfortable thing for many people at the outset. I put a few things here. Moment you bring fruits into, see, Swami Chinmayananda says, fruit is future, work is present. He says, by simple logic, you focus on present here. Whereas most of the time, we focus on future. Because fruits is future, work is present. The general understanding, if the present is done properly, it will lead to future. It may or may not, is what he is saying. Now what we are doing is we are managing outcomes rather than the work itself. Because we are wary of failures. Right? Refuse to undertake great activities, but great challenges and great things will never be taken. No? That's a problem with corporate thing. No? That's why they are not very, that's why the new and startups are much more, this thing than incumbents. Because they are worried. They have things which are all measured in all kinds of ways, so they want to play safe.
Quarter to quarter mentality.
Focus on ends instead of means will happen if you are worried too much about fruits. Correct? Process orientation will give way for, these are all happening, will give way for result orientation. Process orientation will go and then we look for result orientation. We don't know how those two will get connected. Right? And you tend to escape the dynamics of present and go after the future. Right? In fact, this is the best way to understand. I give this example. I see a cricket match, 8 hours goes like 8 minutes. You know when it happens? And in not only cricket match, when we do work without looking at results, you will experience the joy. This is the joy. Oh, time passed off, I didn't know.
Not playing, you really enjoy.
No, whichever way, it doesn't really matter. I am saying when you are not fixed on results, that work you will enjoy. And you will make a statement like this: I was lost in the work. You know what do you mean by lost in the work? Mahapaleshu Kadachana came into real operation. That's the meaning actually. Moment you keep the results. So the other example you gave are all of that category. When you keep results out, you will actually pour the best of what you have and you forget the time and things like that. That is one meaning. So Mahapaleshu Kadachana is a practical advice Krishna gives us so that we can get lost in the work forever. Really get lost in the work. That is what he is getting at, because otherwise it will be very problematic. So Buddhi Yukta hai, with that kind of a knowledge of Karmanyeva Adhikaraha, Mahapaleshu Kadachana and all those, and they are being expanded in several shlokas. Jahati here. So once some develop this frame of mind, Samatva will come. Now they will say Sukrit and Dushkrit will not bother me much. It will bother. That's why I said you can have emotions, don't become emotional. We must have emotions because we are all human beings. The nerves are all sending signals. So we should have emotions, but we cannot become emotional. That is bad. So this is a state in which you will have emotions, but you will not become emotional. That's why Jahati, Iha, both of them, Sukrit and Dushkrit, both you will take it. I mean, some work went well, some work a little bit got spoiled a little bit and so on. Both you will take. Tasmat Yogaya, that is the yoga. So here the definition of yoga is, how do you take both as it comes? Well, even when you put the best foot forward. Tasmat Yogaya Yujyasva, your work done like that will be very efficient. Karmasu Kaushalam. That is the real meaning. So the meaning of efficiency is not input by output. The engineering, this is much larger actually. This definition of efficiency here is slightly larger. What is that larger definition? Modern view is this. More material output, fewer input. This is called efficient. Right? Stress on quantity, which really threatens modern society actually. Because you can have broken person with very high efficiency is very much possible. Of what avail is this efficiency if the person is broken at the end of the day? Broken person with high productive efficiency is a possibility if you go with that idea. Right? Economic prosperity and poverty in mind and heart. There are examples like that. So this kind of efficiency will be lopsided. Whereas what Krishna is talking about is different. He says work must develop your inner self. If work does not develop your inner self, there is no point. It's not money. You can get money and become the most disappointed person on earth. What avail is this money? So it is not giving it up. You have to take, there are two carts, the cart has two horses, please. Take both. Today we are traveling just on one route. We have just abandoned the other part. Gita is saying bring it back. He says you have pravritti. That's why I said pravritti and nivritti. That logo dvito first class I mentioned. Pravritti and so this is about if you marry pravritti and nivritti, that efficiency is different. That efficiency is that has it made you good? Work should make me a much wiser person, a much complete person in life. How many of us can say that with today's measurement? So let the measurement be there, but you take charge of yourself. Don't blame the measurement. You take charge of yourselves. That's the point.
Need for inner development happens when your basic physical needs are met, right? Like food, clothing, and shelter. Because there are a lot of people who work really, really hard for 12 hours. There are people who stand in the malls in the washroom for 12 hours, and they are paid very meager salaries. Like what kind of perspective they will take?
Actually, a lot of them have actually developed this level of yoga buddhi. Because if it had been just food, clothing and shelter, only then I can do a better job and become a little happy, they would all be in Nimans actually. No, seriously, you just think about it. I tell you, the poorest of the poor has a lot of titiksha, which we don't have. In fact, my other Gita class, I actually first two classes I showed a lot of statistics. The point I was making, titiksha has nothing to do with it's a state of mind. It is inner self, has nothing to do with what you earn, nothing to do with how others look at you. I mean, it's a very different perspective, But a lot of poor people are able to be a lot more happy. So it was not just dependent on, because if it had been dependent on that, their misery level must be much higher. I am saying with a little bit of experience, you just go to the villages and see, they have not lost themselves.
You forward that article of that person who won the walking pilgrimage. And one of the
Nipun,
yeah,
the walk, which I put in that.
Walking 10 kilometers to get one bucket of water, and this guy reaches and gives all the water to that person. So, maybe we cannot...
No, so basically, this food clothing, so that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which they teach in motivation. I actually disagree with that. There is no hierarchy. That comes from this view. You can be absolute pop. I have seen here, in IIT Madras, when I was there, 4 of us will go to Taramani village. This is in 70s, 80s. There are not many. We'll go there and then we will teach maths and English to the students. Believe me, they were all very poorest of the poor. But I don't know how they manage. Moment we go for the class, they'll get 3 of us, they'll get 3 cups of bonita. My sense is they could ill afford that twice a week. 3 cups of bonita for us twice a week. I think they were not eating. In fact, there is one, you were there, Sridevi, there was a Vikasana presentation last year. You were part of that? One, Have a Heart Foundation. There's one Have a Heart Foundation, that person said a heart melting story. There was one 6-year-old girl whose heart had some problem. Fruit vendor's daughter, somewhere in Davanagere or something. There are thousands such examples. I'll give you one example. Davanagere or something, fruit vendor's daughter, heart was fixed because I Have a Heart Foundation. That trustee narrated the story. So this girl was asking all the time, how did I become alright? How did I become alright? Without curiosity, she knew she has become alright. Right? So the father told that, there are some people in Bangalore who help. That girl will understand. You can't talk about. So this man said, he gives that girl 1 rupee for food. I don't know what she will, maybe 1 banana or 2 bananas, something she will eat, I don't know, going to school. After 3 weeks, she gave a sweet box to this father and said, can you send this to the man who helped me in Bangalore? Father asked, how did you get this? She said, you give me 1 rupee. For 3 weeks I didn't eat. This is very common. We don't know, but this is very common. So being very grateful is our inherent nature here. If you have money, you don't see the pain of how to be grateful. When you don't have money also, you don't see the pain of being grateful. That's what I am making. There's no hierarchy here. She narrated that. He said she didn't eat for 3 weeks. For 21 rupees, she collected some fruit, something or something sweet, something. He said, please give it. That man narrated that. He said, we get several stories like that. So, it is possible that this can be. So, inner self can be independent of what is happening.
What I intended to say was, sometimes poverty makes people to, steal or do a lot of things. So, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would only think that the propensity to steal has any difference between people who have money and people who have no money. Because they steal in large numbers here. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, that's okay. Anyway. So the cardinal principle that is being brought in, which he advances throughout Bhagavad Gita, is somehow to de-link work and result. Results will come. But don't put a gum and then stick it so strongly. Loosen it a little bit is the argument, and he says there are some things. That will bring a larger principle of efficiency of work and spend more time turning attention inwards and so on. We are so much worried about these fruits, we have no time for insight. That also happens at another level. So all that he is talking about. Okay, then there are a couple of ideas. I'll start and then maybe next class we will be able to finish it and go to chapter 3. Then he talks about the last 18 shlokas, a great description of how we get tossed all over, how we mess up our own life, which he revisits also in chapter 6 and so on. So Arjuna actually asked a question, Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha. He asked, what is this Sthita Prajna? Sthitadi, what do you mean by Sthitadi? Kim Rajayata, how does he walk and talk? These kinds of questions he asks. So in reply to that, the chapter ends with 18 beautiful shlokas. We'll see some of them. So shlokas 50, so 69 to 72 are conclusion. This is this run up of all the discussion. So I put all of them in a slide. So he first talks about the attributes of, in concise terms, who is a Sthita Prajna. Okay. Then he says, how does he get there? So he is casting away all desires of mind and turning the attention inwards. That's one thing. Then how to handle experiences as you go through, right? How to react to real-time events. He uses the example of tortoise and then explains that. Then this is the one, freedom of choice, right? And precautions about misapplication of the idea. Even very wise people can be just swung away, be careful and all that. And how the senses can really take you away. So some set of ideas, be careful about it and so on. Few we will see. So what will the Sthita Di, fixed Buddhi? Buddhi is not wavering, which means it knows what is Sat and Asat. It knows what is Nitya and Anitya. It knows what is temporary and permanent. That sense of discrimination is very high. That's the meaning. It's called Viveka. Nitya, Anitya, Vastu, Viveka. Vichara or Viveka. What will lead us? He says it will make your mind a lot more calmer, which is one of the problems that we go through. We will be having a very measured response to outside. Whatever stimulus comes, are you simply reacting, or you will get a little more, you'll slow down a little bit, and that gives an opportunity to turn attention inwards. I want to tell you, I keep talking about it, for the rest I will do it. There are two worlds for every one of us. There is a world outside and there is a world inside. Please understand, there are two worlds for all of us. And there is a world. In fact, what happened to Arjuna? The world inside was in big storm, because he made sense of world outside. What is world inside? It is actually a filter through which you see the world. That's why, in Dakshinamurthy stotra, it's 8 beautiful pieces of psychology. He says, Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari tulyam. This world, he says, Shankara says, world is like a mirror. Vishwam darpanam. Darpana is mirror. Drishyamana nagari tulyam. And what will you see? Nija andargatam. You will see only yours. That's why some people, make the students stand in the sun and beat them. That's what they have. What you have only will come out. That's why the same thing. One fellow will say, it is bad. Another fellow will say, this is all right. The third fellow will say, this is good. Why? Because you are only reflecting. The world is only a mirror for us. Please understand, the world is a mirror for us. The world inside reflects on the world outside. So, turning attention inwards is, please understand the world inside and then clean up the world inside. Your world outside will look much better. Because mirror, what you see only you will see, na? If you look bad, you will see only bad in a mirror. How can you see better in a mirror? Not possible. That's why this is very, very important. One can become more thoughtful, silent and composed and so on. So that is what somewhere he is getting in these 18 shlokas. If you want a sense of what is he getting at, this is what he is getting at. We look at this, again world of duality, everywhere it will come. Look at what he is saying. Dukkeshu anuvidgnamanaha sukeshu vigata spruhaha. This is our problem today. Average person's problem lies here. We'll see that. Vitaraga bayakrodaha stitadihi munihi uchyate. He says, who is this Muni? See, the word Muni has, the meaning of Muni is Manana Shila is Muni, one who is silent. See, if you react for everything, you can never be a Muni. And to be silent is not easy. If you have to be silent, first your mind must calm down. All the previous slide, what I said, can only make you silent. Silence is a person who can maintain silence is called Muni. Manana Shilaha is Muni. That is a Vigraha Vakya for Muni. Who is Muni? He says, Dukkeshu, there may be, bad things that can happen in life. That's why he said, Matra sparsast kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkataha agama paino nityaha tam titiksha swabharata. The roller coaster. Life has roller coaster. Please don't go up. One day when you fall, nothing we can collect. Please go up and down. Don't keep on going like this, because one day you fall, that's the end of the story. If you go like this, life is safe actually. So the up is this and the down is here. So he says, Dukkeshu, what happens to these people? Stitadi, person who has a fixed buddhi, first thing that happens to him is Dukkeshu anu vidgna manaha. He doesn't, thinks the whole world is lost for him. That's our problem. When the going is good, we actually party, we go and then cloud nine, everything we do. Moment, things get bad, depression, sleeping pills, psychological counseling. We have 2 psychological counselors in Bangalore full time. 1 or 2, I don't know. Because we need it now. Because these are all we can do. We don't need an outside help, actually speaking. So he says, Dukke.
Is it getting busier?
That I don't know. Dukke, I'll be happy if they are not busy actually. Dukkeshu anuvigna manaha. He says, bad things will come, take it. Take it with grace. This is wisdom or grace. Take it with little grace. Sukeshu vigata spruha. This spruha, this sudden, going up, that is gone, vigata. So don't overreact when you have success. Also don't overreact when you have this overreaction of the negative variety, this overreaction of the positive variety. Have party and t-shirts and then pink slips. You have both going again and again kind of a thing. No, not that. Can you take with grace? Take everything as grace of Lord. If you can develop that meaning to life, lots of baggages that we carry will just drop. But this is not easy. We have to reflect on this idea. And if we reflect on this idea, then Mahapaleshu Kadachana becomes much easier. I am not bothered actually, because I am now operating from this angle. Take everything as grace of Lord. Life is lot more interesting actually. Life can be lot more interesting if you can take things as grace of Lord, good or bad. That's what he says. If somebody practices this, what will happen? He will lose three things. Bhaya will go, Raga will go, and Krodha will go. Only when you have this attachment and aversion, because I want only good things to happen, bad things happen, I completely lose my cool and I think I am the most useless person and only bad luck. Mind, how it works? It works great. It will really spin in a much bigger thing actually. So if people can practice, this is again the duality. If you can practice this, he says, Vita is gone, without. And what are those? Raga, this great sense of attachment. Bhaya, fear comes because the more and more you are attached, the fear increases because you may not get, probability operates. Na? So that is called Bhaya. And then when it did not happen the way you wanted, Krodha will come. Anger. He says all the three negative forces will go. So it is simple law of conservation of energy. If energy is saved here, that's why yoga karmasu kaushalam. Efficiency will improve. Because now this energy has to go somewhere. Simple equation if you put, if energy is taken out of this, where will it go? It will go to work. And if it goes to work, that work has to be a little more efficient. They say yoga karmasu kaushalam. Sthitadihi munihi uchyate. Then he says, yaha sarvatra anabhisneha tat prapya shubha shubham. Same idea is coming. Whatever shubha or ashubha, tat prapya, whatever comes, just take it, generally take it. Get a little emotion, get some emotions, but don't get into the emotional plane and then lose it out too much. This requires practice. First we have to be convinced of this idea. And in fact, one shloka I didn't tell. Swalpamapi dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. He says, Krishna says, try one epsilon and see for yourself. You will see a dramatic change for yourself. Trayate mahato bhayat. Swalpamapi dharmasya. What ideas I am saying, try one epsilon once in your life, you will find it for yourself. He says, in fact, after 700 shlokas, finally he says, Arjuna, I have told some things, if you want, take it or leave it. He never said you should follow and all that. That's our Indian culture. He said, you just think about it. I have told you, do whatever you want to do. Yes, you should go, keep going, no problem, Sridevi.
When you say that one whose mind is not shaken by adversity, but then when we are in a state of adversity or when there is fear, when we had gone through some setbacks in life, when we reflect on it, and when we are broken from it, it's in that point like we are more closer to God, our dependence is more on God rather than ourselves. Because oftentimes when we have just happiness or like we are too proud, to admit that there is somebody who's in control of our life and who's, beyond us. But then these states, when we are affected by that, we tend to, calm down and become reflect on what we have done and become more closer to God, because a broken heart and a contrite spirit is always closer to God. So how is that like if you
No. So there are two responses. The response that you are saying is very good. When something bad happens, to reflect on it and being closer to God is a very good thing. But the other thing is, I will, depress myself, I will become social. Normal, many of us do it. We detach from the society, we feel very low, we say we are worthless. It all happens inside. It is talking about that. What you are saying are all good. There the dhi is working, not the mind is working. In the example I am giving, mind is working, dhi is not working. Buddhi is not working, mind is working. In the example you said, buddhi is working, which is good. If the mind is working, it is not good. Mind will really, throw all kinds of adversities in front of you and bring you even lower. What you say is perfectly alright. Right? So he says, sarvatra anabhi sneha. Don't get sneha, don't get attached with anything. Which means take it as it comes. Good also comes, take it. They say, oh, today has been a good day, let's have it. Bad, okay, let me go over it. Maybe let's take it. That frame of mind will actually is what he is saying. Tat prapya shubha shubham, shubham or ashubham, whatever you get. Can you be an anabhi sneha? Be unattached, right? Na abhinanti. So when sukha shubha happens, it's not abhinandana. Na dveshti. When Ashubha happens, no Dveshta. So these Abhinandana and Dveshta are in the mind domain. What Sridevi is saying is in the Buddhi domain. These are all in the mind domain. These feelings are all in the mind. Vichara is in the Buddhi. What you are saying is Vichara. That is Buddhi. We are talking about mind. Mind is the biggest villain in us actually. We have to worry about the mind a lot more actually. If somebody is able to be like that, Tasya Prajna Pratishtita. He is a Sthita Prajna because he is not shaken that easily. So that's what he is saying here. I think I will stop here. Maybe I have some 7-8 more shlokas which we will continue in the next class and move on to chapter 3. Yeah? Thank you. Yeah, there is a prasad here. Please take some prasad.